Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Media Boat Podcast,
Mhm.
your weekly episodes where we talk about movies, TV, music, video games, and the Olympics.
Yeah,
All
probably.
right here. My name is Mike. His name is Matt.
My name is Matt. His name is Mike. Thank you for joining us today on this fine July 30th, 2024, just days away from August, if you can believe it. This is episode 446, and we have a lot to bring to you today.
Yeah, so let's get right into it, starting with the music section. Start the music section with the Billboard, and start the Billboard with the Hot 100. And the hottest song in the land is a bar song, Tipsy by Shabuzi. Coming in at two, I Had Some Help by Post Malone, featuring Morgan Wallen. At three, Not Like Us by Kendrick Lamar. Coming in at $4 Million Baby by Tommy Richmond. And rounding out your top five, Espresso by Sabrina Carpenter. Does that all sound familiar?
Yes, it did not move since last week. No movement in the top five in the Hot 100 this week.
As for your Billboard chart, your albums chart, your Billboard 200,
You're I just want
your Bill
to
bumps.
make sure everybody heard what you said. You said your Bilbums chart.
Yep, your Billboard chart, your Alboard 200s.
Sorry. Anyway,
Anyways, The Death of Slim Shady is not the number one album this week.
no.
It could not repeat. But instead, we have eight colon mini album EP by Stray Kids. Coming in at two, Muse by Jimin. And if you're wondering about these two albums, yes, they are K-pop albums.
Yep.
Uh, then at three, you have The Death of Slim Shady, Coup de Grace by Eminem. At four is The Tortured Poets Department by Taylor Swift, continuing its slip down the album chart. And rounding out your top five, The Great American Bar Scene by Zach Bryan. If you didn't like any of those albums, we have new releases, starting
Hmm.
with Sincere by Khalid.
Yep.
Not the DJ.
No, not DJ Khaled, but Khalid.
Yes. We also have Stampede by the mysterious Orville Peck.
Hmm.
Agori Mori May by the Smashing Pumpkins. Yes,
Yes.
it may be
Those Smashing
July
Pumpkins.
or August by the time this gets out, but it's those Smashing Pumpkins. We also have the Well I Fell Into by Why?
Hmm.
Question mark.
Hmm.
And lastly, Smoke and Fiction by Twitter.
No.
I mean X.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yes. All right. Let's get to the music news, and we get out of the depressing news story that was here and
You had to
into
mention it.
a even more other weird story, dealing with the 1975.
A follow-up to something we've talked about before.
Yeah. So the organizer of Malaysia's Good Vibes Festival has indeed filed lawsuit against the 1975 and all its members individually, following frontman Matty Healy's protest against the country's anti-LGBTQ laws during the event in July of last year.
Yeah.
The festival is seeking 1.9 million pounds or $2.4 million after the band's antics resulted in the festival being shut down. In court documents filed by the festival organizers, Future Sound Asia, in the UK High Court, they claim that the 1975 and their management team were aware of the numerous prohibitions the band had to abide by in order to perform. They point out the band previously performed at the festival in 2016 and we're told of the prohibitions, then and we're reminded multiple times again ahead of the performance last summer.
Yeah.
So this is a classic case of we told you, 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 and you did it anyways.
And this goes back to when we first talked about this story about my misgivings. This is kind of summarized as my misgivings about the 1975 in general. Like Matty Healy makes a big talk about being this progressive guy and doing all these so-called progressive things, but then he doesn't walk the walk. And some of the stuff he says, I don't know, on podcasts or some of the stuff that he chooses to engage in, such as a festival in a famously anti-LGBTQ country, it doesn't follow. Like those two, there's a disconnect between those two things sometimes. So I don't blame Malaysia for suing them because consider this is like if you had somebody who played by your rules before, why would you think they were going to change it? Why would you think all of a sudden they were going to make a big grandstand about it? And that's exactly what they ended up doing. Like, yeah, on face on face level, surface level, I'm glad that they kind of pointed out the hypocrisy, and I'm glad that they did something and said something, used that stage for a reason. But here's the question: should they have been on that stage at all with the way that they think about, things, or were they trying to prove a point? They were basically like they had to have known that this was going to end up this way, like to a certain extent that they were going to get sued. Like, I don't know, it just all just feels muddy to me, and it just reinforces my existing feelings about Matty Healy and the 1975 and their whole vibe. It's like, pick a lane, guys. It's kind of what I want to say to them.
I mean, you regardless of the band's stance, when you're booked for a gig, you gotta abide by the rules. I'm
Yeah, or
surprised
just
Golden
don't.
Voice hasn't sued Frank Ocean for
Right.
breaking their rules.
But it's like, don't take the gig if you are in opposition of the rules that they're giving you. That should be number one, right? Is if you
Mhm.
get a thing saying like, don't like we don't approve of any statements pro, like homosexuality, then don't take that gig.
Or you
Period.
don't take the gig and put out a statement saying, we would like to play at
Right.
this festival. However,
Yes.
due to
We don't agree
Malaysia's
with.
stance
Yeah.
anti-LGBTQ, we feel like XYZ.
This all could have been avoided. And I get that sometimes you have to like, trick, I guess, something into happening so that way you make a statement or a point about it. But after all of this, was it really worth it? I don't know. Anyway,
I mean, it is the 1975, so
exactly.
how much of it is actually worth it to them?
Yeah, I don't know. And that's the thing is that blurry line is what the number one thing I just don't get about them. Like they
Well,
just don't
that's the
make
other thing
sense.
about this is that they're suing all its members individually
Right.
for the
Yeah.
antics of one member of the band.
Yeah, but with the assumption that they work again as a unit and that was part of their plan.
Mhm.
Then again, who knows with Maddie? I have no idea.
I don't know. I feel like it's their way of trying to get the other band members to say he doesn't speak for us.
It's not gonna happen.
I know it's
Excuse
not
me.
going to
That's not gonna
happen.
happen. There's no way. They've got his back, I'm sure.
Well, I know it's not going to happen, but this is like very lawyery the way they dole
Yeah.
out the sentencing here,
Although this also
or the
means,
crimes.
right. This also means that Charlie XCX's boyfriend is part of this lawsuit. Just a fun fact for you.
So is he Brat?
You know what? You'll have to ask Charlie. She is the arbiter of who is and isn't Brat these days.
Well, at least we know who one person is Brat,
Yeah.
according to her.
Yeah. Anyway.
Anyways, did you listen to anything?
No, not really. Nothing, no major releases that I knew of.
All right, then let's move on into video games,
Mhm.
where we start with new releases, including Game from the Future, Mars 2120 for everything. Wide release. You got it. You can play it.
That is coming out of early access on PC and thus is also getting its console release.
We also have Star Wars: Bounty Hunter for everything wide release. You got it? You can play it.
That is a remake, or I guess a re-release of a PS2 era shooter. I played a little bit of Bounty Hunter. I think I rented it once, and
Yeah.
it's an okay third-person shooter game from the early 2000s.
Let's say, do not confuse this game with Star Wars Hunters that came
Right.
out last month.
Or Star Wars Outlaws, which is coming out soon and is the big Ubisoft release.
Uh, we also have, thank goodness you're here for the PC, PS4, PS5, and the Switch.
Yep, hearing good things about that one. It's a funny British platformer.
There's also The Garden Path for PC and the Switch. And lastly, World of Goo 2 for the PC and the Switch.
Yeah, remember World of Goo? I feel like this is a large gap between the first and second games.
Yeah, it's Goo Lemmings.
Yeah.
All right, let's get to this video game news.
Yeah,
And all right, I know we talked about this last year, but dust off your boots, bring out your signs. It's time to strike again.
it's time.
As video game workers who are members of SAG-AFTRA, the labor union for American actors, have called for strike action, which began on July 26th. The strike was called after the union failed to negotiate acceptable protections around the use of AI for its members. Last September, SAG-AFTRA members approved strike action if the union was unable to get terms it considered acceptable while negotiating with interactive media agreements. The SAG-AFTRA negotiations had been ongoing with several video game companies and their performance production arms since October of 2022, including Activision Productions, Blindlight, Disney Character Voices, EA Productions, Formosa Interactive, Insomniac Games, Epic Games, Take-Two Productions, VoiceWork Productions, and WB Games. Those companies now likely won't be able to hire unionized actors to perform motion capture or voice work for their games.
Yes. So yeah, the other shoe dropped. The strike is on. So, like that last line mentions, this affects SAG-AFTRA members who are doing voice roles for games and also SAG-AFTRA members doing motion capture performances. Both will be affected by this strike. And those are the companies listed so far that we know are going to be affected by this. You'll note some of these are the actual publishers of these games, like EA and Activision. Some of these, however, are organizations that act as a third party liaison to cast games with voices. You see Disney mentioned there for Disney games
Mhm.
across publishers, for instance. So yeah, it's a good mix. So I want to note an asterisk about Take Two. You saw Take Two productions on there. The asterisk there is that you might be wondering, what about GTA 6? The Grand Theft Auto games are famous for having a lot of voice acting and a lot of motion capture performances. Well, I'm happy, question mark, to report that GTA 6 will reportedly not be affected. There is a carved out exception for some reason for this strike for GTA 6. Not all members are happy about this, but that does appear to be the case. Take Two and Rockstar are on the record right now saying that GTA 6's production will not be affected, for better or for worse. Um,
Kind of
yeah,
interesting what that carve out means and why is it
I know.
specifically this game.
But regardless, as earlier in the story says, this is about AI. They believe that there weren't enough protections. Already you see a lot of publishers reacting to this by saying, "We gave you everything you wanted, and the only thing is one tiny thing left over." Well, turns out that tiny thing is what they're fighting for here with this strike. So yeah, we'll my hope and my passion is behind, of course, the voice actors and the performance artists who are affected by this strike. I hope they get the terms that they want. I hope the bargaining is fair. and reasonable from the publishers and other companies. And I hope it works out for them. And I hope they get I hope it doesn't last too long because we saw how long these companies can wait against SAG-AFTRA when we saw this in the film and television strikes last year. Hopefully it doesn't last that long. Hopefully this gets resolved because we don't want what happened last time to happen again, which was a lot of games went forward and recorded with scabs. Hopefully that doesn't happen, but we'll see what the companies do.
I see because this is video game that it just might last longer
Mm.
because there's a lot of development that they can do without voice actors and just have temporary voice actors and then redub the lines once this gets approved.
Yeah, but if that game gets published with that temp's a scab. And I think a
Yep.
lot of game developers, who, by the way, are starting to slowly make giant unions. We haven't had a chance to talk about it on the podcast because other stories have come up. But in the last 2 weeks, we've seen two different Activision divisions completely within Microsoft now, completely unionized. The WoW team, World of Warcraft team, unionized. They have a wall-to-wall union now that is being recognized by Microsoft. And then also we saw it happen with Bethesda. So not, I guess, exclusively to Activision, but under Microsoft's umbrella. We saw Bethesda create a union about a week and a half ago. So I bet they're going to have solidarity here with the SAG-AFTRA actors, and it's unlikely that you'll see a lot of scab work coming from within studios. I think they know better. I think ultimately it's going to be the publishers that are going to be pushing these games out the door, and I think they're going to hit a roadblock, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens.
It is interesting that they formed the unit on Activision Blizzard after they merged
Yeah,
when we kept talking about how they were trying to form a union
right.
before that happened
That
and everything
well,
they did to try and bust that up, including
see
getting the
the
governor involved.
But here's the thing, there's a reason for that. And it's because Microsoft, when they were still up against the wall with the FTC for the Activision deal, had to say repeatedly to the FTC, no, we're going to be cool with unions because Activision wasn't. And that was a big problem for the FTC. Lena Khan and folks were saying, if you guys do this and you have the same like attitude towards unionization, then then this is not going to be cool. Microsoft had to talk a good game about unionization. So now we're on the other side of it. They have to pay the piper on that. They have to do it because they promised that they would.
Do they? They also
Yeah.
promised not to keep Call
Yeah.
of Duty on Game Pass. They also promised not to raise race. They also promised not to do this
Well,
and that.
I'm
So
just
I guess
saying,
5 steps
yeah.
forward, 5 steps backward, 1 step forward doesn't equal progress.
Exactly. But I think when you're talking about something like this that the FTC could again sue them for, they're exercising caution, I think. And just because there's a union doesn't mean Microsoft is going to be fair at the table with them. So that's another question is, do they actually do business with the unions the way that it's best for the union? That remains to be seen. So even though they're created, and congratulations to the people that are in them, that's only part one of this effort, and the work's not done. So yeah, it'll be an interesting next few months, considering how long this goes, to see whether negotiation happens with the SAG-AFTRA teams. I don't know. But yeah, I'm pulling for the actors here.
As we always are.
Yeah.
All right. Did you play anything?
So you mentioned Call of Duty on Game Pass. I'll be brief here because it's not a new game, but I've been playing a lot of Modern Warfare 3. I'm back in Call of Duty mode. I forgot how addicting game could potentially be,
Yep.
addictive that game could potentially be, and it's completely absorbed me. I was playing right before we recorded today. I'm
Yeah, I
leveling
remember
up guns.
when the alpha came out the free weekend and I was playing that
Yeah.
like straight 2 hours, like, whoa, where'd the
Yeah.
time go?
Time just goes poof. And the cool thing about this one is that they brought back a lot of maps from the Xbox 360 Modern Warfare 2.
Hmm.
So it's all the classics. And so yeah, it's just like it's throwing me back. I'm like, whoa, but they look better and it plays a little better. I'm just like, whoa, this is crazy. So yeah, playing a lot of that, but literally to the detriment of everything else.
One thing, not to my detriment, I've been doing college football.
Yep.
I've If you've been following my stream on twitch.tv/MediaBoat, you will have noticed that I pivoted from being a running back to being a quarterback.
Ah,
And with that big pivot, two things I have noticed. Number one, I don't spend all my activities just to heal me each week.
good.
And two, that has allowed me to upgrade my player to where I am now competing for the Heisman and the
Okay.
national title.
Yeah.
So go Horned Frogs, TCU for 1 year for about 5 more games until I enter that transfer portal.
All right.
But so
Let's
far, someone awesome's freshman year is on track for one of 5 Heisman's. I am gunning for it now.
do
It
it.
does suck that it seems like the only way to do it is to be a quarterback, just
Mhm.
because in the past it is very quarterback heavy
The
role.
odds are in your favor. Yes.
Yeah. And it is easier to control the game, the pace of game when you can pass or you can scramble out and run the ball and just dominate the game that way instead of waiting for the coach to call your number as a halfback or waiting for the quarterback to pass to you as a receiver.
Mhm.
But now that aside, I have been watching someone else play it instead they are a linebacker and they made their character Bobby Boucher and they are the Waterboy stream and I think it's hilarious.
It's good.
So check that out on YouTube if you're at all interested in a hilarious take of college football.
Sure. All right, cool. Well, while on the subject of games, I understand some Olympic games are happening. Why don't you take us into the sports corner and tell us about the Olympics?
Yes, as we go into the sports corner into television, the Olympics have happened and the
Are
Olympic
happening.
controversies have happened. Because before the opening games, actually, before the opening ceremony even occurred,
Mhm.
there's already a controversy with the Canadian women's soccer team having a bit of the
Yep.
Spygate on their own, with an unauthorized drone hovering over a competitor's practice.
Yep.
And they were caught and they were immediately sanctioned with a -8 point deduction before they even played a match.
Yikes.
That being said, there is a way they could get into the next round, the quarterfinals. All they had to do though was win every game by a 5 goal shutout.
Only.
Only do something that's only been done a handful of times ever in the Olympics.
Hmm.
But them's the breaks.
Yeah.
But other than that, I've been watching a lot of Olympics.
Same.
Do we want to talk about just a Gold Zone right now then?
Yeah, we might as well. And briefly
I've been
about the
abusing that thing every
how yeah.
day.
How about let's
10
talk about
hours.
how about this? Let's talk about Gold Zone and the actual games now, stuff that we watched. And then in thoughts, we can talk about the opening ceremony. I think
Okay.
that's fair. Because that's more TV-ish.
That is more
Um,
TV-ish.
but yeah, no, same. We've been pretty much having as long when Gold Zone is on because of the time zone, it's not on during the evening for us. But when it is on, we've been keeping it on mostly if baseball is not happening and watching what we can. I've seen, and the thing is that the nice part about it is because it's showing you sometimes multiple events that are all happening at the same time live. You're seeing a lot of events that you wouldn't personally go seek out yourself. So I've seen everything like running the gamut. I've seen judo, I've seen fencing, I've seen handball, I've seen swimming, of course, but also some like I just saw the a little bit of women's individual archery today.
Mhm.
Like we saw some water polo, men's water polo earlier today as well. Just like it just runs the gamut. You get a little taste, little tapas of each sport so you can kind of get an idea and never miss a big event when it's happening.
I like the
It's
way that the way Gold Zone is structured, in that if it's a medal match, they will take you to it. They will take you
yes,
straight through the end. Doesn't matter if it's gold or bronze. That it's a medal match, so it's highlighting it.
right.
Below that is anything in the semifinals, anything that has implications for a gold match.
Yeah.
Then below that is Team USA. Any sport, anywhere Team USA is playing, they will cut to it and prioritize that. I like that. I also don't like it, but at the same time, it is a USA network, or it
Yeah,
is
yeah.
NBC, it's USA, it's yeah, it's prioritized.
But see,
And
the
then
nice thing, the thing they have as a backup for that is if you want specific things and you already are on Peacock and you can go seek it and everything is there.
yeah, every event is streaming on Peacock. So
Yeah.
if they cut away from something, you can just
Right.
go and watch
You
the
just go.
entire stream of it.
Yeah.
And then they don't one thing I really like is that they do not highlight only Americans,
Yeah.
team and players. They highlight all sports. Anytime something exciting happens, like there was a showdown in the épée and fencing divisions, which was so fun to watch. And
Yeah.
then there's a showdown in the uh uh both the skeet shooting and the airsoft shooting,
Right.
which had world record attempts happening in it as well. And they cut to it.
Yeah.
And I'm used to watching events like this because of Red Zone, but to see it happen for the Olympics, because
Hmm.
all events are happening at the same time, it just makes it so fun to watch.
Yeah.
And it takes you right to the action. Very few commercials, but when they are, they're just over immediately, and you're right back into single view, multi view, quad box, octa boxes, a deca hexa box.
Yeah, so like a couple things. One is I think it's good that you mentioned Red Zone because it's like I think the reason why this is so good is that they've been watching similar kind of things for like other sports, develop that technology and figure out the best approach for it, and they've adapted it perfectly here. And for the first time they've ever done it, this is a fantastic execution of the idea. Second thing, this in its own, I think, is like the way that they've like packaged the Olympics this year, the way they're doing all the streaming stuff on Peacock, I think is single-handedly the best way to market Peacock that they have. They have to weaponize this. They have to be like, hey, do you care at all about the Olympics when it comes in every 2 years? If you do, Peacock is more than worth it because you do get all of it at your fingertips. And it's just there. And then like Gold Zone serves it up to you live. Of course, in the future there may be Olympics that are in even more awkward time zones. Like I think Gold Zone's going to be less of a of a sales pitch. It's going to be a harder sales pitch if, for example, the Olympics are somewhere where everything's happening at 5 a.m. Thankfully, that's not the case right now, but it could be someday in the future. Um, Not a problem, obviously, for the 28 Olympics, Summer Olympics, because they'll be here in our
Yep.
backyard, which is terrifying. And I don't want to talk about it. So, but yeah, in general, it's a cool idea. I think that it's a really good set, like example of what streaming is good for and what it should be used for is stuff like this, making it as easy as possible to enjoy live things on demand at your fingertips.
This is one thing that makes one live TV very special and unique, especially
Yeah,
that sports is something that can't be reproduced across all streaming networks. That it has to be in one pipeline to be available to everyone.
yeah,
And for this being the first year that they're doing Gold Zone,
it's
they
impressive.
are indeed knocking it out of the park.
Yeah,
And just the hosts themselves just coming in and like get one, getting you up to speed. Two, establishing what's at stake with everything, why they're cutting to it. And then at three, just constantly reviewing and going back to like the medal counts, going back to, oh, you may have missed this, but you want to check this out. If and then also promoting that if you want to watch more of this, like they'll cut to tennis midway and be like, we know tennis matches are long, usually an hour. If you want to watch this match, go over to the stream right now. So
right.
because all within the app, it's very handy and very unique to its own to its current situation, and very consumer friendly, very customer friendly. I love what they're doing here.
Yeah.
Uh, Anything else about Gold Zone besides just gushing over it?
I mean, we could talk about general Olympic stuff as well. You have some stats here,
Yes, I
our
do.
medal leaders.
current medal count, the US is in the lead with 26 medals. Uh, with those 26 medals, that does mean that the US has accrued 3,000 Olympic medals
Wow.
across both summer and winter games. But they are by far the first country to reach the 3,000 medal count. France, host nation, currently in second place at the games with 18 medals, with China right behind them at 14 total medals. Of course, those are total medal count. If you want to count strictly gold medals, that goes to Japan, currently in the lead with 7 medals, 3 of them coming from Japan, sweeping the judo competition, as you
Yeah.
mentioned before. Elsewhere, the women's all around happened earlier today
For
with
gymnastics.
Simone Biles vaulting, pun intended, the team into first place and thus securing Simone Biles with a record 8 gymnastic medals, 5 of them being gold medals.
Yeah, I got to watch some of that, including the big fancy finale. And yeah, it was cool. It was close there for a little bit, but the girls pulled it off and just remain like Simone Biles just remains this invincible like Olympic paragon. Like she will be
Well, we say
like,
that, but we also remember what happened in
yeah,
Tokyo when she had
but
to
that's
pull
a
out.
but that's the thing though, is that like it shows that's even crazier in a way that she was able to bounce back, take all of that pressure and turn it into gold again. She is 27. They mentioned several times on the broadcast that this is the oldest, she is the oldest competitor in Olympic women's gymnastics in the US team since 1952. And then overall, the women's team this year was the oldest team in decades. And so everything was against them and they still pulled it out. Just goes to show you what a consummate athlete she is, just what an incredible human being she is, just has the power to jump back, bounce back after all that pressure and still make it happen and still bring the gold home. It's inspiring stuff. And it's like, oh, yeah, that's right. This is what the Olympics are. It's inspiring stories just like that.
Aren't the China gymnasts 28 years old though?
So like I said, US team. This is just US records we're talking about
Okay.
here.
Because I
We're not
remember when
considering other.
Beijing 14 years ago when they were competing as 14-year-olds. So if they're still on the team,
Damn.
they'd
Yikes.
be 28.
Anyway,
Anyways, yeah,
but yeah,
lots of Olympic coverage. They'll continue for 2 weeks,
yeah.
up until the uh, 14th next week.
Yep.
So we'll have
Looking
2
forward
more
to more.
coverages of Olympic news as it occurs. The swimming finales will wrap up this week,
Yep.
with track and field starting the following Tuesday, I believe. Starting
Okay.
following Monday and Tuesday,
Yeah.
with the closing ceremonies happening on the 10th and 11th.
Excited to see more swimming events where Katie Ledecky is so much faster than the other competitors that you can't even see them on the screen. Did you
We're
see
rooting
that
for
happen?
Titmus here.
Oh, well, fine.
Only in the short events, even then, though she like uh faltered at the end.
Well, anyway,
So because she
like
is not
yeah.
as invincible as she is, she's not the next Michael Phelps of swimming.
Who
But
is?
yeah,
Anyway,
no. But it
moving
does bring
on.
an interesting question of we'll get to it later, but we'll talk about like the handoff from the France
Yes,
to US later and opening ceremonies in a minute. But
we
first,
will.
there's other sports that happened as we get ready for sports here, homegrown, not over in France.
Right.
The NFL, it's here. It finally crept up on us. The Hall of Fame game will take place this Thursday with the Houston Texans versus the Chicago Bears in Canton, Ohio, for the first preseason game. And then we wait 2 weeks for the other preseason games to happen. But after that game, we will have the inductees for this year's Hall of Fame class, including, but not limited to, Patrick Willis, Julius Peppers, Andre the Giant Johnson, kick returner special air, Devin Hester, and Dwight Freeney with his patented spin move.
How do you feel about these picks?
Love Dwight Freeney. Love Devin Hester. Devin Hester should have gone to do it last year, though. Yeah, and then Julius Peppers and Patrick Willis, pristine choices. I get DeAndre Johnson, not in love with it, but I understand it. Yeah, and then yeah, NFL just around the corner as we get through August here coming up. Elsewhere in the MLB, guess
Yes.
what? It happened. The trade deadline is officially over.
Yes.
So the lineups are set. No more moves can be made between teams. You can still bring people up and down,
Yeah.
but you cannot trade within the teams any longer. It is officially
Yes.
shut off.
So, as everybody thought, this ended up being a seller's market. A lot of big transactions happened. If you're on the National League, at least. Not a whole lot of American League dealing happens. A lot of teams actually just completely froze like deers in headlights and didn't make that many moves. Some teams, meanwhile, surprised people with the amount of moves they made. I'm looking at you, Baltimore Orioles. The
And they're always
Marlins
trying to
had a
make it. They're
fire
trying to make
sale.
that push right now.
Yeah,
They're
the
in that
Marlins. Yeah,
zone of we have to win
right.
we have to win the Olympics. We have to win the World Series
We're not
now.
competing in the Olympics this year. No, but yeah, and
Well,
then you
well,
had a
it's a challenge because they can't compete in 4 years. They got to
right.
win now.
But yeah, you had a fire sale in Florida as both the Marlins and the Tampa Bay Rays pretty much just sold most of their lineups. And then
Yep.
you had the San Francisco Giants coming in swinging, being like, actually, we're going to try for the playoffs, which I think surprised some people. Yeah, a lot of a few players returning to teams that they've been on. One three-way trade occurred, which is always fun to say, or fun to see. Both actually, it's fun to say a three-way trade, and it's fun to see a three-way trade. Both are true. So yeah, check on your lineups. They may have changed, and this coming weekend might look a little different for your team.
Yep. Especially if you're going to travel to see a different team that you
Yes.
might not have seen.
I do want to say one thing, and I want to get your take on this. I saw somebody tweet that if, say, you had a team that was that it still hasn't signed their draft picks. And if you were wondering why they weren't that active during the trade deadline, they said that there might be a reason for that because of the new college, like the new considerations
NIL.
regarding the NIL payments. People brought that up and said, like, oh, if you haven't considered this, this might be why those roster spots are like not clearing as fast because those signings haven't happened. And I hadn't considered that. A lot of people are pointing to that when you're talking about the Angels, how the Angels were expected to do a lot of deals this week. Didn't really do many. They got Carlos Estevez, their closer, over to Philly for some promising prospects, you could say. But beyond that, they traded a couple more guys and then we're done. You didn't see a lot of big moves. And I think that a lot of that is because they still haven't signed some of those college guys. So we'll see.
Well, it's because, especially if players come out of high school,
Mm,
they have just because they're drafted doesn't mean they automatically go to that
right,
team. You
right,
still have to sign them, they still put contracts in there. The player can opt out of the MLB contract and
right.
instead go to college.
So we
That
saw
is,
this happen.
yeah,
This happened to an Angels signee that or a draftee that ended up not signing and going back to college.
yep, yeah. Unlike the NFL where you are drafted and then you go play for that team,
Right.
well, I mean, you still have to sign the contract for your rookie deal, as we saw with Marvin Harrison Jr. holding out forever.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, it's just because you're drafted
Yeah.
doesn't mean you're forced to play for that team.
So, anyways,
Just
I just
ask
want to
Eli Manning
mention.
how that turns out.
Right, exactly. So yeah, I wanted to mention that as kind of a complicator that's new this season that may have thrown things off a little, thrown a wrench into the system a bit. Otherwise, a fun trade deadline to watch. A lot of big deals right at the end, which was fun. I had MLB TV on in the background while I was playing Call of Duty, and I was hearing all like they had a little jingle every time some trade deal happened, and they just kept having that jingle all up until like 3:02, and it was just like, wow, stove is hot. So it's fun.
Yep. I'll tell you what's not hot though. The Chicago White Sox.
No, they're not.
They are on a
The cold.
15 game losing streak.
If you think that's bad, this is the second time this season that they've had an over 14 game losing streak. Like we thought it was bad when the Angels had theirs last year, but no, you have it twice and you look really bad.
They are the only team to not hit 30 wins, but on the even downer side, they are the first team to hit 80 losses this year.
Oof, oof, ouch. Hate to see
Don't worry, there's still 2 months left of baseball. They can
it.
hit another 15 game losing streak.
Yeah, they could, in fact.
All right. And speaking of losing stuff, the NBA, and more specifically the Warner Brothers Discovery, have lost the NBA rights officially, as the NBA league decided not to go with the Warner Brothers deal that they said matched with Amazon, but
Mm.
ultimately in the wording did not. So they denied it. And you were right
Yes.
from last week. They are going with Amazon. Warner Brothers and TNT inside the NBA is no more.
It seemed like they wanted to do a direct deal with Amazon the whole time. They were entertaining the Warner Brothers offer, but ultimately, yes, you're right. It was that phrasing they used that it was match. That was a match when it wasn't. Amazon doesn't own a television network, so there was not going to be terrestrial television rights on the line. However, the Warner deal would have included the traditional cable package shows on TV on TNT specifically. And so it wasn't an exact deal. So the NBA decided, well, we're going to stick with Amazon. Sorry, this is not what we asked for.
Yep.
Interesting.
And now I have to walk back my words from last week. All right. I think that's all the sports that we have
Yeah,
here.
any no other sports hanging there?
Nope, because college football start of week 1 is a month away.
All right. So we'll
Uh,
look
so
forward to that.
training camp and oh god, like first week of college schools start next
Oh
week
yeah.
because
Oh yeah, schools
August.
are in session very soon.
Yeah,
Turns
there's their
out.
session.
Yeah. All right. Well, with that, let's move out of sports and into television. And we start the television section with some news about yet another bundle. Don't you love a bundle?
This is
So
one we already talked about.
it is finally one of the bundles that we talked about coming to fruition. The streaming bundle of Disney Plus, Hulu, and crossing enemy lines, Max, is hitting the market today, or at least when this was written. The
It's
price of
yesterday.
today?
Yeah,
Yesterday.
yesterday.
Okay. The price of $16.99 a month with advertising and $29.99 without. Customers can save up to 38% on the bundle of Hulu, Max, and Disney Plus compared with the standalone prices of the three. Subscribers to the bundle, for at least now, will save money, but will still need to visit different apps in order to access the programming. This is already how the ESPN leg of the Disney Plus bundle works.
Mhm.
The joint venture Venue Sports, which has yet to launch and supposedly, once it's been approved, coming the end of this year, involves the same two companies along with Fox in a sports focused linear aggregation service. And we'll see when that eventually happens. But for now, if you have already subscriber to these three things and you want to possibly save some money, you can look into this. I might look into this and consider it, but remains unseen if it will save me any money.
I mean, it says 38%, but that's really totaling about $5 to $8.
Right. Slim.
Because roughly like an extra $10 on top of the Disney Hulu to add Max instead of the 16.99 that it is standalone.
Yeah. So I don't know. Do your research,
I
figure out if
did
it's a
not
good deal.
see if you have Hulu plus Live TV
Mm.
bundled with the trio, if you could just add Max onto it. I
Yeah, I
mean, I
don't
know
know.
you can do that, just regular add Max onto it, just like you do it with Amazon Prime Video. You can just add Max, you can add Paramount Plus, you can add Showtime. Well, I guess now they're all lumped together. But yeah, you can add to it, but you still have to. It'll still take you to those separate apps. Still waiting for that single platform. Disney has kind of flirted with it with Disney Plus and Hulu,
Right.
combining if you subscribe to both.
Yep.
Would have been nice if they would have done this with Max, but I can understand how
No.
difficult that would be to integrate.
Yeah. I feel like that is the bridge too far, I
Yeah,
think.
seeing Raya the Last Dragon next to House of the Dragon.
Not gonna happen.
One of these things is not like the other. One of these things is not
Eh,
for your kid.
yeah, turns out. All right. But anyway, that's it for television news. But we, as we mentioned before, watched some television, specifically the Olympic opening ceremony.
Yes, the pageantry, the
Yes,
the parade of nations.
the Frenchness of it all.
Oh, I mean, should we just
So,
dive right
so very
into how
French.
Steven Spielberg opened this? The very French
Yeah.
Steven Spielberg
So here's,
opening the
yeah.
games in
So
the US broadcast.
before we start talking about the primetime package, I want to just briefly bring up before the primetime, I actually watched a little bit of the live coverage. And so I'm able to see, and then we rewatched the primetime once Christy got home. So I got a kind of taste of both.
I
All
did
that
too as
stuff
well.
was brand new at the primetime. Not didn't happen at all. And so it was interesting to see the contrast. But
Yes.
yes, you're right. Most of us did, yeah, see the Spielberg intro, which went right into the French presentation. And yes, I mean it when I say French presentation. This was the most French thing I think I've probably ever seen. There was can dancing. There was a fashion show. There was a guy doing parkour on the French rooftops. There, of course, was the Arc de Triomphe and the Eiffel Tower and a sewer for some reason. There was
And
Phantom of the Opera. There was Les Miserables. Everything you could ask for.
the Notre Dame Cathedral with the ringing of its
Yes.
bell since the fire several years
Yeah.
ago.
It was pretty cool. Yeah. There were baffling moments. There were exciting moments. And yes, there was the lengthy as always Parade of Nations, but this time in boats.
And it wasn't all at once. It was interspliced between
Yes.
the parade of nations and the pageantry of France
I
or
did
of
think that was
Paris.
cool. I thought that was a cool way of kind of keeping it going and not feeling like, all right, how long do we have until stuff happens again? It was a
Well,
nice change of pace.
I did make note of that while we were watching it because whenever in the years past when they do the Parade of Nations, it does feel like a showstopper
Yeah,
because it literally stops the
literally is.
show and then you have to wait an hour and a half for every nation to walk through and get their time in the spotlight.
Right.
But to do it in between, it means that, oh, we're not going to stick here for very long. Also, they combined nations on the boats, which was nice. It wasn't just all like one nation, one boat, unless you're America and Great Britain and France and Australia, where you need your own cruise ships of 500 people floating down the scene.
Yeah.
But yeah, I
Same.
did like that it was interspliced.
Yeah.
And I want to say it's also the first time that they took the opening ceremony and put it outside of a stadium. I've never seen
Yes,
that before.
that was really cool. I think that is a first, I want to say. And yeah, it was neat that they could incorporate the fantastic sites of France by the Seine, such as the Eiffel Tower, where you got to see all of the things about Paris that makes Paris so great during the opening ceremonies as a nice reminder of the culture that's there. You had even a portion where our masked stranger went through the Louvre, famous museum there. So it was just like just French thing after French thing after French thing. And what else is the opening ceremonies of the Olympics supposed to be besides a showcase of your country's offerings to culture? And that's exactly what it did.
Yep. That's why the minions were there, just offering French culture to everybody.
Yeah, the minions were there. A nice reminder that yes, the minions are French,
Yes,
like it or not.
Illumination is a French studio,
Overall,
in
yeah,
Paris.
it's true. Overall, I had fun. I think that pretty much all of it was pretty great. Some of the performances, I want to say there was a 50-50 on the performances when you came to the musical performances, which were supposed to be the big deal. You had Lady Gaga, who let's say didn't seem super rehearsed performing early on. But then you had the opposite of that coin, which was a incredible show-stopping performance from Celine Dion, who I can't imagine what she was going through during that performance. But she killed it. And considering like, the health scare and the like, not
It's her
being
first
able to
appearance
perform.
since being
Right.
diagnosed publicly with stiff person syndrome. That, yeah, she
Yeah.
absolutely crushed it. Just
Right.
the
Yeah.
voice
It's like nothing
belting out,
happened.
bringing
Yeah.
over everybody as
Yeah.
the cauldron was being lifted up.
Easily the high point of the ceremony, the last thing that happened
Yeah,
in the ceremony. But yeah, easily the highlight. So yeah, but yeah, overall, I think it was a good way of doing it. I think they nailed the presentation of it. I think that yeah, besides the Lady Gaga stuff, there wasn't really a big low.
I can tell you why the Lady Gaga was very low. She doesn't want to speak French. It was just a bad romance.
It's not even the words, but yes, you're not
Yeah,
wrong.
it is. Play the words. But yeah, no, I think it was fun that they used that architecture of Paris, like we said, going around there. I really liked the directorial aspect of it, interspicing between taped and live events,
Yeah,
the cutting back and forth. Just so many goddamn cameras around the city.
yeah,
And I will say that watching it live compared to the night version, the primetime version,
yeah.
you get two completely different takes on it.
Yeah,
Because the primetime version is very cut down. It's very condensed. They do cut a lot out and they kind of like help speed it up. Whereas with the actual live version, they stick with it. It runs the entire 4 hours. They're not constrained to meeting commercial blocks. They're not constrained to
right.
meeting certain angles or certain aspects. That they let it run. They let it play out. They let it breathe. And because
Yeah,
of all of that, it allows you to take in what makes the opening ceremony a true ceremony and
right.
not a primetime event.
Yeah, it just is reliant on how patient you are with announcers going, and they're still coming down the Seine, which happened like 15 times during that, which was hilarious. But yeah.
But yeah, I any
Yeah,
last
good
thoughts
times.
on the opening ceremony?
No, I mean it was
Um,
fun. It was just as
Cauldron is
bombastic and
unique.
huge.
Cauldron is unique, and
Yeah.
everything about the airborne ceremony that helped make it unique. In the rain.
Yes, that's the other thing is yeah, the whole thing was rained on, which was pretty crazy. So
Yeah. But
yeah.
hey, the show must go on. The cauldron is lit and the games are a playing.
Yes. And well, like you said, we'll have more Olympic coverage in the coming week and bonus, I guess, in the third week because it'll still be wrapping up. So, yeah.
Yep. We'll see the closing ceremony and the official handoff
Yes.
between France and the US as they are the next ones.
Yeah. Next one's
Um,
for summer. Of course, there is a Winter
yes.
Olympics between then and now.
Yes, and they did announce who would take place after the US in 2032. It is going down under to Australia. First time
Yes.
it's been there since Sydney, but
Right.
it's not going to be at Sydney and it's not going to be at Melbourne. It's
Hmm.
going to be at New Wales. Where's it going to
I
be?
don't
Northern.
remember.
It's not Melbourne because they did that. It's not Sydney because they did that.
It's
It's
not
up. It's New
Brisbane,
South Wales.
New South Wales. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Hmm.
it's up. Keep going up. It's not Sydney. But yeah, we're going to Australia after the US, and they
Yeah.
also announced the location of the 2034
Hmm.
Winter Olympic Games
Yes.
coming to the US, Salt Lake City.
Back to Salt Lake City after, of course, 2002, in which they took place there.
Yep. But as we'll remind everybody, whoever wins this next Olympics or this next election gets to herald in the Olympics in 2028. Just saying.
Well, we'll see. There's a lot of other concerns about the 28 Olympics, but yeah, again, we don't
Well, there's
want
also a
to
lot
go
of
into
concerns
it
about
here.
the 2024 election, but
Yeah.
we'll
Anyway,
get there.
Let's move on, though. Anything else we watched this week?
Futurama is back, but I could not get to it because Olympics was
Yeah,
dominating my eyeballs.
priorities. We got
Yes,
them. We got them set.
yeah,
All
I
right,
can
with
catch
that,
up on
then,
Futurama later.
yeah,
I cannot
not
catch up
important.
on the Olympics.
Right. All right, let's move on then into cancellations and renewals.
What am I no longer watching?
We start with a sad one. Unfortunately, the reboot of Clone High on Max will be ending after 2 seasons. I mean, I'm happy that we got what we did, considering that the how like that show had completely evaporated and was so hard to find. And so it was cool that they were able to bring it back for the 2 seasons. I thought they were pretty high quality and they did a good job with them.
Did you
So,
end up finishing the second season?
we still have a couple of episodes left, I think.
Same. And that's probably why it
Yeah.
got canceled.
Man, we didn't do our part. We also saw the end of Life and Beth, canceled after 2 seasons on Hulu.
That is the Amy Schumer show on Hulu,
Yes.
or at least it
Next,
was
yeah,
the Amy Schumer show on Hulu.
right. Next up, Renegade Nell on Disney Plus, canceled after 1 season. But then we had a slew of renewals, including The Kardashians getting a seventh season on Hulu. The
Technically sixth and seventh. It's a 20 episode order. They're probably
mm,
gonna split it up between 10 and 10.
yeah, probably. Then we also got a renewal right in timing with its debut of the first season for Sausage Party Foodtopia on Prime Video. That is the series spinoff of the film Sausage Party.
I have not
Um,
watched that.
no,
I don't
don't
know if
plan
I
on.
want to watch it.
No,
I thought just the movie was
enough.
over the top and
Yeah,
enough of the same gag.
yeah, no, thank you. Can't do it again. We also saw Prime Video renew Has Been Hotel for a fourth season, Invincible for a fourth season. We saw AMC bring back the Walking Dead spinoff Daryl Dixon for a third season. Hulu is going to be bringing back Solar Opposites for a sixth season. And last but not least, Netflix is bringing Blood of Zeus back for a third season, but a third season that will be its last.
Yep. A lot of these announcements happened over the weekend because it was San Diego Comic-Con.
Yes, Comic Con, and
And
that's a
yes, we'll get to that news in a
yes.
hot second.
I was gonna say that's a perfect segue into the movie section where we'll be talking a lot about comic stuff. But before we do that, we have the weekend box office numbers. And hey, speaking of comic books, your number one movie was, of course, Deadpool and Wolverine with a whopping $211 million weekend debut.
We will both be talking about the records and my thoughts on it in a second, but
Yes,
let's get through the rest of the box office.
it's true. Coming in at number two, Twisters, $35 million this week. That's at 154 million domestic. That is a hit.
That's not 211 million in one weekend, so
No, it's not, but it is a hit and good for Twisters. Number three, Despicable Me 4 with another $14 million. That's already 291 domestic. That's going to hit 300 next week.
so
Number
will Deadpool Wolverine next week.
Yes. Number four, Inside Out 2 keeps making the moolah with $8.6 million this week. That's at 613 domestic. That's also finally passed the all-time animated film record globally, and we'll have that record now. So goodbye, The Lion King.
That was Frozen 2.
Well, I'm making a joke because how Lion King had that for such a long time. Yes, I realize that Frozen 2 took beat that record at some point, but still.
Well, yes, but also Lion King, the 2019 version, is still technically above it,
But it doesn't count because it's not an animated film.
isn't it?
Okay,
Isn't
again,
it?
it
It's a
is to
CG
us.
movie.
It is to us, yes, but to the people who make these charts, it is not.
I know.
So talk to them. Anyways,
Isn't it?
isn't it? Number five is Long Legs with another $6.7 million this week. That's at 58. But it's not a big blockbuster. It was never meant to hit those high highs. So that's probably where it will stay. Upcoming this week, your big new releases. There are two of them. We have Trap.
This is the M. Night Shyamalan movie about capturing a serial killer in a concert venue.
Sure.
Uh, Looks interesting. I was kind of hooked on the premise.
Yeah.
I will be checking this out on Peacock when it comes to streaming.
Yeah, exactly. And then something for the kids, a film adaptation of classic children's book Harold and the Purple Crayon.
This one is stars Zachary
Levi.
Levi, yeah,
Yeah.
as the titular purple crayon.
Yeah. I don't know.
No, I mean
I don't know
Harold,
about that.
and he has the purple crayon.
Right. No. Yeah. I don't think he's the crayon.
No, but he brings the crayon and stuff to life using it.
Yeah. So there you go. Those are your two new releases. Now let's talk about Deadpool a little bit. You're going to talk about your thoughts about the film a little later, but first, we have to talk about all the records that Deadpool and Wolverine hit this weekend. It is now the highest R-rated opening of all time, both worldwide and domestic, at $444.1 million worldwide and 211, as we mentioned, in 1 week. Deadpool and Wolverine beats previous record holder Deadpool, the first one from 2016, which made 264 million worldwide and 132.4 million domestic. So you can see already that is a big difference between where it was and where it is now. Biggest global opening, by the way, since Avatar: The Way of Water, and the biggest domestic opening ever for Ryan Reynolds, Hugh Jackman, and its director, Sean Levy. It's also the highest July opening weekend of all time at domestic box office, which is crazy considering that it is a summer month where summer blockbusters are expected to come out. So that's quite a number.
Also during the Olympics when
Yeah.
people are at home watching sports.
It is also the 34th consecutive MCU release to debut at number one at the domestic box office, the number sixth highest domestic opening weekend of all time. And it also means that Walt Disney is now responsible for 16 of the top 20 opening domestic weekends of all time, with the MCU by itself responsible for 11 of those 20. Walt Disney also owns 5 of the top 6 opening weekends of all time at the domestic box office. And by the way, to date this year, Walt Disney has released the number one title of May with Planet of Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, the number one title of June with Inside Out 2, and now the number one of July with Deadpool and Wolverine. So after that lousy year that Disney had last year, it looks like we're experiencing a little bit of a Disney renaissance.
Last year, I think it's been 5 years since
Yeah, that's true.
2019
Right.
that they've ruled the box office like this.
But yeah, so we're seeing a little bit of a bounce back. They figured out some movies that are making money for them.
Yeah, the sequel to Planet of the Apes, the
Right.
sequel to Inside
Inside
Out,
Out.
the sequel to Deadpool 2.
Yeah.
Guess what's coming for Disney?
Sequels.
Sequels.
Seems to be working for them. Speaking of some Disney bits, we now travel to, as you mentioned before, Comic-Con, in which several headlines came out about Disney. First off, unrelated to Comic-Con, but still news. And as I mentioned, Inside Out 2 has topped the $1.5 billion amount and has now passed Frozen 2 to become the highest grossing animated movie ever.
Yep.
But yes,
Domestic
from
and worldwide. It
right.
passed Incredibles 2 for the domestic total and Frozen 2 for
Yes.
the worldwide total.
So yeah,
Uh, but yeah,
impressive.
all those coffers still go to Disney, even though it's Pixar.
But yes, the big reveal coming out of Comic-Con, specifically about the MCU, was that, well, he didn't really die at all, did he? Robert Downey Jr. will be returning to the MCU, but not as Iron Man. Instead, he'll be Doctor Doom in the newly titled Avengers Doomsday and Avengers Secret Wars.
Now, to be fair, this is not Robert Downey Jr. that we know.
Right.
Okay. This is post Oscar winning Robert Downey Jr.
That is true. That is true.
There's a very distinct difference between before you win an Oscar and make $1 billion movie and after you win an Oscar and make
Right.
$1 billion movie.
And yes, a lot of people are pointing out this is not the first time that they've used an actor multiple times in the MCU to play multiple characters, but it will be the first time that such a big name has played two characters. So it'll be interesting to see what they do and how they finagle it so you're not just staring at the screen being like, yeah, but he's Iron Man.
I
Also,
mean, if Chris Evans can be both the Human Torch and Captain
right.
America, can't we have both for Robert Downey Jr.?
Yeah, I guess. Less of a big deal, I think. But yeah, the other news was about the Avengers films is that the Russo brothers will be returning to direct them. That's a big deal considering that they are kind of the go-to directors when you're talking about high quality MCU movies.
Yeah, suck it, Joss Whedon. You ruined that for you.
Oh yeah, no, he ruined that for himself.
Yes.
You're
But
right.
yeah, this is actually part of some contract negotiation that came out courtesy of Deadline after the announcement was made that Robert Downey Jr. will be making a stupidly amount of money to the north of $80 million for
Yes.
his return for these two films. The Russo brothers will also be making $80 million to
Yeah.
return to direct these two films. So
Needless to
back up the
say,
truck
yeah.
of load of money because that's $160 million for three people.
But you know that Bob Iger was back there being like, we have to do this.
Well, because Deadpool and Wolverine just made 211 million at the box office. They're like,
Right.
oh, we do have money after all.
Turns out. But
But
anyway.
yeah, part of the stipulation of bringing back Robert Downey Jr. was that he would not come back unless the Russo brothers were there to direct.
Got it.
And so that's why you got all three coming back for both Avengers movies. There is a rewriting going on. So now it is McFeely writing both Avengers Secret Wars and Avengers Doomsday, courtesy of Marcus and McFeely, but no Marcus because they had a falling out post Avengers Endgame. So now it's just
Aha.
McFeely doing it, which could be good, could be bad. We'll figure out which one's the true brains behind the writing duo.
We will, I guess. All right. But all of that aside, you engaged in some MCUing this week, and you saw the most recent release, the aforementioned Deadpool and Wolverine. You were part of that big domestic windfall. So tell me, what's is it worth it? What's going on with Deadpool and Wolverine? What are they doing here that is interesting enough to warrant a third Deadpool movie?
Uh Hard to say outside of the one, it's trilogy capper.
Oh,
Two, it's Deadpool in the MCU.
yeah,
And three, it's Hugh Jackman as Wolverine after he said he wouldn't play Wolverine following Logan anymore.
right.
So it's got three things going for it of like a finale, both in Deadpool finale, Hugh Jackman finale, and yeah, while it is an MC movie, it can also be seen as the capper of all of the Fox movies. That kind of finale.
Yeah, I mentioned that last week too. I think that's like kind of the interesting angle they've got for this one.
Yeah, it's tries to play with a Deadpool killing the Marvel or the Fox universe. Deadpool kills Marvel characters, but of course Deadpool can't die because he has Wolverine's blood cells, and also Wolverine can't die because he has Wolverine's blood cells.
That makes sense. That Wolverine has Wolverine's blood.
Yeah, definitely makes sense. So that's also why like you bring them both here because they are essentially linked ever since Wolverine Origins came out all those many years ago. The leaked online movie, not the one that came out in theaters. So all that's going into this has a lot of people looking at it because of all the controversies that's happened outside of the movie.
Hmm.
Like I said, with Hugh Jackman's initial debut going all the way back to 2000, playing the same character 24 years later and looking a lot more ripped than he did 24 years ago. So it's this movie, I'm just gonna be very blunt about it, is as much as it is for the fans as Spider-Man Far From Home was for the fans.
I've heard this comparison made. Yes.
There's a lot of fan service in there for
Hmm.
people who are very privy to all the controversies, especially between Fox and Marvel, especially through the contract disputes between Fox and Marvel, Fox and its characters, and kind of just how Fox treated the Marvel properties during the course of its run
Hmm.
before it got bought by Disney. There's a lot of tongue-in-cheek jokes. There's a lot of tongue-in-cheek um, nods, motions, just even straight up pointing to it of this is this is the end capper. This is how they want. This is how Disney
Mhm.
and essentially Ryan Reynolds and the fans, him being a Marvel fan himself, saw the characters of Marvel being used at 20th Century Fox, and more or less how they wanted to fix it in their own unique, very R-rated way.
Right.
There
Right.
is a strict rule to make it an R-rated movie that if you use two F-bombs, you automatically get the R-rated movie. If you show any blood and gore, you automatically get the R-rated movie. Then the first 2 minutes of this film, they do both,
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
just to make sure that you know
You know
watching
what
this
you're getting
that
into. Yeah.
you know what you're getting into, and it's going to lean heavily into the R-rated opening. Um, it felt like at the end of every act that they wanted to kind of incorporate that. Oh yeah, this is an R-rated movie. We're going to show you all the blood. We're going to show you all the goriness, all the over-the-top action to it. So it's not so much gore in terms of like horror gore. It's more just like
Yeah.
shock value, all the blood. You thought Marvel and Kevin Feige wouldn't do blood. Well, Deadpool does all the blood that they were holding back. Uh, this also does lead into, like I said, within the comparison to Far From Home, or sorry, No Way Home, that it
Yeah.
can at times definitely leans into the nostalgia factor and the cameo factor
Yeah.
as expected, because I feel like that's just what they're going for in this phase is your nostalgia and the cameos for anybody who's been paying attention for 24 years of Marvel films. And for me, as a fan, it
Right.
works.
Sure.
But as I said, with No Way Home, if you are not going to spend 9 hours, or in this case, 16 hours, understanding why this one character's appearance is important, is it really an effective move to have them in the film? And that's where I
Yeah, I think
feel
the
like
ultimate question
I'm
here.
giving it
Yeah.
its like as a fan, A plus. I love it. I want to see it again. But
Yeah.
as for a movie itself, very middling.
Yeah, I was gonna say like is it to its detriment though? Is it like all the, let's be honest, navel gazing about Marvel and what it's doing as a movie, taking away from it being a decent movie? Because I think that, yes, the first two Deadpool films were also joke fests and self-referential in their own way. But this is a extension of that, right? It's taking that as a premise to then spin even more up Marvel's own ass, let's say.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, do you think that like without that as a crutch anymore, like do you think the movie part does not hold on its end of the bargain?
I think it does, but you have to kind of look deeper into it because they do very something unique here in that they play with the idea of anchor beings, and you equate anchor beings with stars of a franchise. That if the
Okay.
star of the franchise dies, or gets let go, or gets replaced, then ultimately the franchise kind of suffers for it and eventually is left to die to waste. And it's more of a metaphor for movie studios and franchises and how things get rebooted and IPs get reworked and workshopped into these new tangential timelines that the MCU is very lovingly playing with currently,
Yes.
with the idea of the multiverse. That just because one character dies doesn't mean, basically means that if there was a pivotal character, why continue the story without that pivotal character? Because we've seen that happen with Hugh Jackman and the X-Men saga kind of being lackluster without Hugh Jackman in it.
Yeah.
We've
Or
had
less
several,
of him. Yeah.
yeah, we've had several movies try and get off the ground, especially following X-Men Origins Wolverine, where they wanted to do an X-Men Origins Magneto and X-Men Origins Charles Xavier, but ultimately they ended up scrapping both those projects and combining them into X-Men First Class, which was a hit on its own, but
Right.
also had to do a 4-year redevelopment cycle to get to that period.
Right.
And thank you, Matthew Vaughn, for X-Men First Class, by the way.
Yeah.
We really
I mean,
appreciate that.
you could argue he didn't only salvage that project, he made it matter in a way that it wasn't going to in the first place.
Yeah. I mean, and then they went and made Days of Future Past immediately after that by bringing in Wolverine as a main character plot point into it.
Yeah.
So just inject him
What
right
you gonna
back into it,
do?
and there you go. So yeah, it's a very fun, like highbrow for everyone into the know of the MCU and just Hollywood and the Fox Studio catastrophe. Well, it had its highs. It wasn't all a catastrophe, but at its highs had its lows and everything in between. And people who follow that, it's great on that level. But if you're just here for the Deadpool self-referential, fourth wall breaking, everything's going to be a joke, 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 joke fest, it's got that too. It's very little low for people who going into it are just like not at all interested. Because if you're not all interested in Deadpool and like what he is, you're probably not going to see the movie anyway. So you're probably not just going to enjoy it. So this is definitely a movie for the fans.
Yeah. So yeah, just this is our inside baseball warning, I guess is what we'll say. Is like if you have to come in knowing at least enough to not be lost at sea here.
Yeah. And there are plenty of video essays out there explaining why this
Yeah.
cameo is making sense, why this person is
Right.
showing up, why this object is here in the void.
Yeah,
So
that's there if you
uh,
want to seek it out
it's
and
there
get
if you want to seek
answers.
it. I will say that several times throughout the movie, it does feel like they needed to rush it along just to get to the next place, whether it's quick jump
Hmm.
cuts or using portal technology or just like jumping over into here because we need to keep the story moving. We need to move over here. That there are several times in the movie where it was very painfully obvious that scenes were stitched together based on portal technology to just be like, okay, we need to get over here, so let's just move it over here via portals. Uh, but that being
Right.
said, I think it's a nice ending to Deadpool as a franchise
Okay.
and a nice welcome in should they continue with Deadpool, because they could do kind of leave it open ended of we may use you, we may not. We'll just see what happens
Yeah.
because there is no stinger
Right.
post credit scene to where it's like Deadpool will return in the MCU. It just leaves it open ended of we can use him if we want. He will be around. He's not going away, but we're also not going to guarantee that Deadpool is returning or
Right.
when you'll see him next.
Because the gymnastics that you have to do to incorporate him in the PG-13 universe is going to be way too much work for them to do. So
Mhm.
yeah, I think that kind of putting him on the side, on the shelf, if you will, for use if they want to make another R-rated film that plays to his strengths, I think is the smart move here because you can't just put him in the toy box. You can't just do that. You can't because it's so different of a universe. But,
Right, because as soon as he gets into the screen, is you're gonna make a you're neutering me joke.
right, 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 right.
Just instant. Oh, here's my balls. Why don't you neuter the rest of me while you're at it?
See, there you go. You just hire
And,
you as a writer.
and there you go. There's your
Yeah.
R-rated warning right there.
Anyway. So yeah, okay. So it sounds like a good like a good eh your mileage may vary kind of vibe on it, but I expected that.
Yeah, but for a fan base of 25 years, which has been building up, and these uh let's call them 35 to 40-year olds who are
Yeah.
watching this movie are contributing it to the $211 million box office
Yeah,
opening.
turns out.
That being said, I want to put this little either caveat or asterisk on it. Never in the history of the box office as a movie opened up to $200 million plus and not hit $1 billion.
Interesting.
But with Deadpool Wolverine being an R-rated movie, will it not hit $1 billion?
I think the drop off could happen. That could be very real. So yeah, we might see that for the first time.
Yeah.
All
Interesting to
right.
watch as we continue with the box office, but we will watch that as it unfolds over the next coming weeks.
Yes, because that will be all for the movie section this week, and that will be it for the Media Boat podcast. So, thank you for listening to this week's episode. If you want to see us next week, you can go to YouTube to find the video version. Go on to YouTube and search Media Boat Podcast to find our channel. Like, comment, subscribe, interact with us in any way you would like on YouTube. We welcome it. Hey, come join our family. We're cool. You can also listen to us in audio form by putting in Media Boat Podcast in the podcatcher of your choice. We're everywhere. We're on Spotify. We're on iHeartRadio. We're on Apple Podcasts. Search Media Boat Podcast and you'll find us. However, if you're a boating podcast and you want to guest on our podcast, we're not a boating podcast. So we appreciate the emails and we like the offer. But unfortunately, we talk about media here on the Media Boat podcast, not about boats. But thank
We
you.
do make nautical puns every now and then.
But I don't think that qualifies us to have a guest on to talk about boats. I'm sorry. We have to politely decline your request. Anyways. But if you want to talk about media, hey, hit us up. On a related note, you can find us on the internet as well. We're on social media networks like Twitter/X, where we're at MediaBoatCast. We are on Facebook. We're on Blue Sky if you search Media Boat Podcast. We're everywhere if you search Media Boat Podcast. You can continue to watch Mike play college football on twitch.tv/MediaBoat. And last but not least, you can see us on mediaboatpodcast.com, an archive of our shows, and email us at mediaboatpodcast@gmail.com if you have questions, comments, feedback about the show. That is where we'll read your messages on the air during our shows. So please ask away. We're here to answer. And with that, we end this week and we will be back next week for even more Olympic talk, more box office talk, and whatever else happens between then and now. Who knows? So we'll be back next time.
Maybe I'll win a Heisman within the next week.
Yeah, no,
Stay
you,
tuned.
your character in college football. I just
Okay,
wanted to
maybe
clarify.
someone awesome will win a Heisman in
Yes,
the next week.
someone awesome could. It's true.
Yes. So
All
keep
right.
watching this space, and we'll be back next week.
All right. See you.
Okay, bye.